Arganisima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganisima.com. Arganisima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Arganisima, New York.
Well, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, a new day, a new show, a new topic, and new guest. Today's topic is a unique and special, literally special for me specifically because it tackles the health condition or an illness that I've lived around, and that is diabetes. And diabetes is something that probably has been forever, existed for a long time, and it will still exist. It is something that can be survivable, you can live with, and so on and so forth, but it's difficult to manage. And today, my guest is a special guest, actually, for various reasons. First of all, she is a diabetic person with a lot of experience, and she had a long-term dealing with this illness. And we're going to address this. So basically, today's topic is like diabetes and you, a new perspective with our guest today, Hanna Boethius, all the way from Switzerland. So
Yay!
that is unique. So I've had a lot of people all over the world, but Switzerland is the first. So today is a very unique thing. And we have how many hours? 7 hours, I think, difference?
Six,
6 hours. Yeah. Wow. So, hey, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure. Finally.
Yes, we made it. Well, we had to reschedule due to time differences, but we made it today. That's all that matters.
Definitely.
So Hanna, let's talk about diabetes in general. And I know there's a couple of types of diabetes, and we're going to talk specifically today about diabetes type 1.
Yeah.
So what is, in your experience, obviously you've done a lot of research, you've been involved in it. Tell the audiences and share with us what diabetes is in general. I mean, people know about it, but they might not know how it works, how the body, becomes diabetic. So tell us the story, your story. And I know it's an interesting story because you've lived with this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So tell us about all that.
I absolutely will. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 2 years old. So I was a tiny little thing, and this was 36 years ago, so you do the math. And basically,
no age.
And basically, so what type 1 diabetes is, it's one of the less common forms. The more common form is type 2. And what happens in type 1 is that your body's immune system wipes out the insulin producing cells in your pancreas. So everyone needs insulin, whether you're healthy or have diabetes or whatever, everyone needs insulin to function, for their bodies to function properly. It's the master hormone in that way. And so when that gets wiped out, that means that I have to forever take insulin from the outside. So either through injections or insulin pump or, syringes. But for the rest of my life, since that day when I was 2 years old, I've always, and I will always have to take insulin from the outside because my body simply can't produce it. The thing with type 2 is, which is far, far more common, that is 90% of all people who have diabetes have type 2 diabetes. Then there are some other fringy types as well. There are about 10 different types of diabetes, but let's focus on these two for today, I think. Mm-hmm. So what type 2 is basically your body still producing insulin and a ton of it, but your body and your cells, first and foremost, doesn't recognize it. So I usually say that it is like having a toddler, that's just screaming around, and after a while you can't hear it anymore, so you kind of block it out. That's what the body does with the insulin, because there's so much of it floating around, but it can't recognize it anymore, it can't acknowledge it anymore. So basically that is like a huge form of insulin resistance. And that can lead to different things. In what these types all have in common is, though, that you have a problem with blood sugar. So your blood sugar goes higher than it should be, which can cause a lot of damage to your body in the long term or even the short term as well. And if your body doesn't have insulin, either whether it can't recognize it or you can't produce it, that is big trouble. So that is, in a nutshell, what diabetes is.
Well, that's a very simplified
Yes,
version,
of course.
which is awesome because again, it has to do with we need sugar for the body cells and for everything to function properly, energy. But if it's not rightly regulated, I mean, it kicks in the body in a whole different world, and it really can destroy the body. And a lot of the stuff that's usually affected, or the areas that mainly get affected, so as I know, are the eyes, the kidneys, the extremities, like so feet and so on and so forth, and and a lot of folks can really have bad effects and bad outcomes if they don't manage the diabetes properly. Now, Hanna, I mean, a lot of people develop diabetes type 1 eventually over time or as they age, but you have probably one of the worst ones, because that's when children's diabetes, and they started early on. It's a very difficult thing, especially as a young age. I'm sure your parents had a whole difficult time to handle it, to deal with it. Obviously they did, but I'm sure initially it was a tough pill to swallow. And for parents that are watching, you just and I know personally some people that have either children that have the type 1, or I've worked actually with people who've been children diabetes or diabetic children from the beginning. So it is a very difficult thing on the parents. It takes a toll, and maintaining and managing, because I experienced it too with my mom, and she's been actually with diabetes for the last 30 years, and type 1 specifically. And so insulin, day in, day out, different types of insulins. We've actually gone through every time there's a new insulin format or whatever, an injectable, we've done it. Trulicity, 70-30, we've done the pills, the metformins, everything, diet and all the stuff. So there's so many things we've done, and we're going to talk about how you've managed it, and you took it to the next level. I mean, you're an advocate. You do this now. Just pushing content and discussions about diabetes, and we'll talk about what you do exactly. But so for folks that are watching, I mean, it is a crazy illness. It is manageable, and and you are literally the effect of manageable. You are an example of how people can manage it, and again, 36 years is a long time to deal with it. You look good, you look great, you have the energy, and there are things that diabetes can do. I mean, it could be weight, because you're not, you basically gain weight because there's enough sugar in there. And again, besides the damage inside, there's also that, so there's different, concept. There is, skin, problems that can occur over time, and there's so many things. I mean, diabetes is just a deep type of discussion, and we can talk about all those. But so Hanna, you were with it for a minute, until you really started doing things yourself. Obviously, in the beginning, I mean, it was your parents. Now, how did they handle it? I mean, especially, 36 years ago. I mean, it's a little different from what we have today. Even the medicines have shifted. That was difficult. Now we have sensors. We have these things that you plug in, and they can monitor your sugar up and down, and hopefully even regulate things, even pump the insulin into you. But back in the days, that wasn't the case. So how did you manage that? How did your parents manage this? And for our parents, this may be something that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the 1980s, this was the mid-1980s when sort of the low-fat era was at its highest. And so basically, my parents, of course, got, from one day to another, they had to start chasing their 2-year-old daughter around with needles and syringes and poking my finger. And I mean, luckily there were those things, because just a few years earlier, there were no home test kits, for example, for blood sugar. And, you still had to boil the syringes to disinfect them and stuff like that, which is, that's just another level. Luckily, in the 1980s, there were, sort of single-use syringes as well for us to use. But of course, like you said, the insulins were different back then. So it was much more regulated when you had to eat, the timing of meals was completely, it was very rigid, as well as, you know, you had to inject with a certain like pre-time, like before you were going to eat, you had to inject yourself at least half an hour before so that the insulin would work until the food hit the system, so that they could somehow correlate in this weird, you know, little math example that is my life. And so that has completely changed, of course, because now the insulins are very snappy. They work almost straight away, 10, 15 minutes, and you can see an effect. And also with sensors and insulin pumps and all this stuff that definitely didn't exist back then. And yeah, so my parents followed, of course, the nutrition advice that they got to a T, which was, you know, a lot of carbs, no fat at all, because, you know, that's dangerous or something. And, you know, you got bonus points if you had more sugars / fruit for dessert and all this stuff, which is technically, it's a little bit crazy if you think about what diabetes actually is, which is you can't process sugar and carbs properly in your body. You need outside help for that. So, you know, stressing your body unnecessarily with too much sugar, I think, is a little bit silly, but this is what we did in the 1980s. So, you know, that was great.
So Hanna, you know, we know what we've talked briefly now about the types of diabetes and, you know, either the lack of insulin or not recognizing the insulin. But what are some of the triggers that in your, you know, your research and your studies and, you know, your work that have been correlating to the source, like what it happens? I mean, you know, we all have, you know, we are born with a pancreas and all this stuff, and, you know, but what happens to trigger, you know, non-functional or a non-working adequately level of insulin in your body? I mean, some people say, well, you eat too much sugar, you know, you're probably going to abuse your body and stuff like that, which could be, you know, too much sugar can actually eventually get saturation and stuff. But is that the only cause? Is that genetics? I mean, based on your, I know there's a lot, and I've read quite a bit, but I want to hear your perspective on it.
No, there's definitely a lot of triggers that can be attributed to this wonderful disease can be attributed to. For example, in type 1, there has to be an immune trigger of some sort. So basically, what is thought of that right now is that you have the genetic predisposition for it, and then your immune system needs to be triggered by something, whatever that is, and then your insulin producing cells are wiped out, and, you know, thanks for that, buddy, kind of thing. But that can be, of course, and that a lot of people have, for example, if they've had a really bad flu and then a couple of months later they get diagnosed with type 1, or a couple of weeks later, or there's something with the immune system usually that happens. So there is a huge genetic contributing part to it, as well as in type 2. It can also be hereditary, absolutely. It can run in families, but it doesn't do it as often as one thinks, maybe. And type 2 is mostly correlated to sort of lifestyle choices, can we say? And not just sugar. Sugar is just one little part of it, but, you know, things like sedentary behavior, things like, you know, stress, things like you don't, you know, this is more of a thing. Maybe the next thing is more of a thing when you actually have diabetes, but, you know, things like hydration, proper hydration, how much that, you know, plays a part, not ahead of the diagnosis, but, you know, there's so many lifestyle things that really impact and can contribute towards, for example, a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, for sure.
Well, Hanna, I mean, you said the key elements. So one is, besides the I guess the inherited, you know, aptitude of the diabetes, you know, it's one thing, but certainly the lifestyles, right? So eating anything and things that have, you know, high carbs, high fat and all that, stresses, you know, not having enough fitness and activity in your lifestyle, you know. So you're right. I mean, there's so many things, and, you know, it takes everything, all these things to be really complete in, you know, each other to actually make healthy or worse, right? So that's the challenge. Now, in your experience, I mean, you've lived with this for pretty much all your life, and you've managed over time. And I know, reading about you, there's a moment where your life has shifted rather, and really you made a difference and started living better. So what, tell us about the pre and post, and what was the main change?
Oh, absolutely. When I was, God, how old was I? 28, something like this. After 26 years of living with type 1, for example, or at that point of time, I was so tired. My body was tired from all of these up and down blood sugars, the deepest valleys of blood sugars that I could barely recover from, up to the highest peaks that I could barely recover from, and everything in between. And that is so amazingly draining for the body to go through, because we are supposed to stay at a homeostasis of, a very, very tiny range, actually.
70 to 120?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're sort of designed for, the human body, and not these, huge things from 20 to 400. That's not what the body is. That's not what it's designed for, not what it's capable of. So I was so exhausted. And at that point, I wasn't sure I was going to see my 30th birthday. And that's a scary thought. Now in hindsight, back then it was just like, yeah, okay, this is my reality. But in hindsight, it was really scary. Just feeling my body slowly just giving up because it can't take it anymore at that young of an age. And that was a big sort of alarm bell that went off. I'm like, what is happening to me right now? And how can I at this young age feel this way? This is not okay. And so hand in hand with this, I had a professional burnout. I was in a line of work that I definitely didn't enjoy. There was nothing that was appealing to me in that. I did it for the money sort of thing. It was very boring. There was no joy to it, which is also a big thing in lifestyle, by the way. Joy in life, joy of life, big thing. Anyway, side note.
No, that's perfect. Actually, it's important.
And then after I got out of that, I started thinking about, well, what do I actually want to do with my life? What is, if we want to go into that, what's my purpose? How can I bring joy into my life? What do I think is fun? How can I help? How can I help people? And then I'm like, well, I have at that point 26 years of nutrition label reading, basically, of experience. So, hey, I'll go into nutrition. It's always fascinated me anyway. It's going to be easy, I thought. Famous last words. And, I'll just do that. And so I started a course to re-educate myself to become a nutrition coach. And it was there that my life really took a turn, because we were in one of these sessions, wherever we were talking about carbs and insulin and how that works in the body and how carbs react in the body and how they work. And my teacher points me out in front of the whole class.
Ouch.
And I'm like, oh, crap. And he pointed me out and he said, you know what, Hanna, if I were you, I'd really think twice what I put in my mouth, because you can't even make this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's the way it is. Okay. And so from one day to another, basically, I started reducing things, because autoimmunity, which is type 1, and, for example, gluten sensitivity often go hand in hand. So I just tried, out of curiosity, to cut out everything with gluten. My dad has celiac disease, for example, so I know it can also be hereditary. I'm like, well, don't need it, cut it out. And I noticed straight away how much better I did, and how much better my blood sugar values were, and how much easier it was for me to impact my blood sugar with this small, tiny little change. And then I'm like, so what else can I do? And that then led me on to this whole big rabbit hole of nutrition, spirals going everywhere, until I realized, well, actually, I personally, which isn't true for every person with diabetes, absolutely not, but I personally do best the least amount of carbs I have. And that's okay with me, it's fine. And I'm very happy, and I'm happy and healthy and energetic, and I love it. And I don't see it as deprivation at all. But, for me personally, that was a choice I had to find out. That was an option I had to find out. And I'm very, very glad and thankful that my teacher did point me out there, because he really helped me save my life.
So Hanna, you went through, I guess a time where you had to make some changes.
Yeah.
You took an interest in nutrition, which drives a little bit on how you can maintain and manage. And you discovered that, there are things that you can do to make a difference.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned right now taking away gluten and reducing carbs in your body. And was that the only thing that actually contributed, or there were other elements that you had to add in combination with that?
Well, nutrition is where it first started. That's where everything started. But since then, it's of course developed into this whole lifestyle again system in a way, for me to feel as good as I can, to be as healthy as I can. Because my goal in life is really to live a long, healthy, happy, joyful life. That's all that matters to me. And in order to do that, I've developed this whole system of things that I do for my lifestyle in order to be able to achieve that. So it then also started including, like I mentioned before, hydration, how important it is to hydrate, things like nutritional supplements, how important that is to get those right and not just take, a multivitamin just because you should, and really properly find out what you really need and what helps you the most, as well as things like sleep and stress prevention or relief, or handling stress at all, and things like movement, what makes you feel good, what makes me happy, stuff like that, and also joy of life that we briefly mentioned before, and how incredibly important these kind of things are in order to have a better sort of holistic lifestyle. And then of course it all started with real natural food without labels.
Well, so let's talk about a couple elements. So the first thing is you really are covering. I've had so many shows about nutrition and healthy habits. No, but they all have similar things in common. Doesn't matter what the disease and illness. At the end of the day, whether it's mental or physical, it's all of the above. It's healthy nutrition, is getting the right stuff, not the sweet and fluffy stuff. It's the stress less, lifestyle, enjoying a life, taking a whole different, liking into your life and your health and your body, and treating it right, as opposed to just like dumping stuff in this body, and that includes having bad jobs or bad, things that you do in life that actually really stressing you out, because that also has all these problems that can be triggered. So these are the fundamentals, it looks like, of everybody out there to live healthy. Yep. You need to look at it from a whole, almost like a 360 angle. I mean, 360 circle here. So you have everything, and they all have to play a part for you to be living healthy, a long life, and a better, exciting life. Because living with the disease, no matter what it is, easy, bad, doesn't matter. Even if you can control it, it's still not, it's painful, because in the case of diabetes, you still have to monitor your blood sugars a couple of times a day. You eat, you got to see up and down. If not, you compensate insulin. You're almost like doing the regulating of the pancreas yourself. Yeah. And it's not the same, because your body recognizes these things and automatically regulates. You have to do it visually, and and sometimes you don't even see it until you feel the actual problem. Oh, I have a headache, I'm lightheaded, I'm sweating and stuff. So those are indicators. Up, down, whatever. So these are, and that's the other part with diabetes. It throws up, it goes down, and those swings between the sugar levels can really do a detriment on your body. And I've seen this. I mean, and I live this, and I try to do the best I can to help my mom with that. But it is difficult, because even like outside, there's only so many things you can do for them. For example, my mom, in the case I take care of, but you are doing it for yourself. But it's not easy as people think. You make it look easy. You've adapted to it. You have a routine, and you know how to do it. But you've complemented that by adding all these other values. And again, sleeping correctly, not being stressed, doing the right stuff, learning more. And now you were just about to say something about eating the right stuff, no labels, no ingredients. So we're talking about natural foods, right? Yes. Natural, healthy. Let's talk about that. Real food. Okay. Yeah. Original stuff.
Original stuff. The stuff sort of from a farm and not a factory. So, real good, natural, healthy protein sources. I eat a lot of meat and fish and seafood and poultry and all this stuff. Vegetables, happy, colorful, healing, wonderful array of vegetables. And then, natural things like dairy. Okay, good. There are huge differences between food quality in, for example, the US versus Europe. And I know from all my extensive traveling in the US that that is not always the easiest to get good quality stuff. But there are some resources that are really, really good, and you can really rely on them providing you with good stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to get expensive to live healthily, because, and also I see it as, you know, either you invest in your health now, or you will have to pay these medical bills later that you won't be able to anyway. So for me, I see it as an investment as well in my future health. And so really just, there's very cliche, you know, eat the rainbow, but that is a good place to start, you know, very as much as you can, the natural ingredients and the real food that you get, and you are already a fantastic way on your health journey.
Well, so Hanna, so there's a few things that, again, we touched on here. So a comparison between, for example, Europe and the US, or parts of the world. I mean, the natural aspects of food and processed food and pasteurized food and things like that, I mean, they're different, they vary. I mean, a lot of countries today, no matter what level they are in terms of economy, they have already adopted all these new commercialized type of foods, right? And you know, but there are places where you can still get the healthy, the natural, the organic from the farm. And now you're in Switzerland, it's probably a lot different than what it is in the US.
It is.
And definitely much different in parts of Europe, and depends where you go, the city versus the suburbs and so on, the villages, all different things. I mean, and that's one element, right? The other element is you're talking about investing in your health. And there is nothing more important than health. And you're right. You have two choices. You can invest now, or you can invest in paying the bills later. And it's not going to be the same, because you're not going to be living happy and healthy, because again, your kidneys, your eyesight are at risk with diabetes. There's so many other, you know, problems that can happen. Your energy levels are, you know, up and down. You can't do certain things. If you can see food that you might not eat sometimes because you just can't. And, you know, sometimes also you have to have also control and will power, because if we all have cravings now,
of course,
that's one thing. It's very difficult. And when you see things that you love and crave, you know, and there's so many options right now. You go to anywhere, you see like all these, they look gorgeous, beautiful. I mean, very appealing to the eyesight and the palates, but you know, they may not be all good for you. And so these are all things that you have to be mindful of, right? Yeah. But then you talked also about the concept of the health and nutritional stuff that is being given to you, and you talked about the spectrum of all the rainbow colors. Now, I wanted to just highlight something about that. It is also often perceived that because it is natural, because it's a plant, because it's natural, it's still healthy. But we have to be mindful and careful about one thing, because if it tastes sweet, it has sugar. So we have to be aware of the moderating, levels of what we have. Because I took a test one time. I'm in insurance and health, and so we work with providers and we do events and health fairs and health festivals. And one time we had the American Diabetes Association. They did this test. So they give you these plates that had vegetables, proteins, and stuff like that. And they tell you like, pick 4 whatever to show us you're healthy. And we all picked up like everything that is vegetable, like looking, but it was like the carrots, the peas, this, that. And then the test was, I failed the test actually, because I picked everything that's sweet, thinking it's also all healthy. But for diabetes, that may not be the case. So it was like an interesting, eye opener, because I didn't realize that, because I thought that was all healthy, that was like, yes, let's take it. That's going to be good for me, but not necessarily for a diabetic person. And I think it was just, it's a good point here to have this discussion, because you are doing this. You are in the nutritional part of this, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what would you tell people about balancing that out? How would be like a good, nice, balanced meal, for example?
Absolutely. I also think there's a very good point. And I think it all depends on where you're starting from as well. So if you are sort of eating a more nowadays, unfortunately, classical Western diet with a lot of junk food and a lot of vegetable oils and, fried this and fried that and all this meat products that might not be the most amazing things for your body, then whatever vegetables you get in is a good thing. And it's not like a yes or no, do or die sort of thing. It's just start somewhere. Sure. Just start incorporating, even if it is sweet potatoes, just do it. So that you have a start, and then you can start exploring from there. A healthy, balanced meal for me now would be something like, what did I have the other day? I had a piece of salmon, which was amazing, that I put on the grill. That was so good. Grilled salmon. It was a new find for me, but it was very, very good. And to that, I just grilled like baby lettuce, for example. And to that, I made a little sauce of something like Greek yogurt and herbs and salt and stuff like that, just to, and I was happy for hours. I was, I didn't crave anything. My body was just happy. But I realized I also am 10 years into this way of eating and this kind of way of thinking. So I think that really wherever you can start, and wherever, anyone out there listening or watching or whatever can start, it's going to be, the biggest step that you're going to take. Because after that, it's easy. Then you can just start exploring. And maybe, that overboiled broccoli or whatever you had as a kid, maybe there are other ways of preparing broccoli that you will like more these days. Or cauliflower is the same thing. I'm like, ugh, in the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, it's smelly and gross and blah, and like bland and crap. And bleh. But, if you make something like a mashed broccoli instead of mashed potatoes, and, have some natural healthy butter in there, OMG, that is, after that, you couldn't chase me with broccoli anymore, with cauliflower anymore. Then I was hooked. So there's so many things. And I think a huge part of this for me is that I definitely eat more varied now than I did when I was just following, the food pyramid. And in the UK, there's the Eat Well guide, for example, and the ADA is also very happy with their food pyramid and all this stuff. And when I was eating like that, and according to that, I was always focusing on the bulky foods first, so bulking foods, so carbs. Like I would have a bowl of pasta, and I'm like, okay, what sauce will I have with the pasta? And this has completely flipped for me. It's done a 180, and now I more think like, ooh, which pasta sauce should I have today? Okay, let's make a bolognese. Fantastic. Oh, what amazing, healthy, happy vegetable should I have with this? And then I can make a choice still. I can have I can have eggplant, mix it into the sauce, and you have like a one pot thing, and it's fantastic and it takes no time to make. Or broccoli again, or cauliflower, or summer squash or something like that. Spaghetti, what are they called? The spaghetti pumpkins. What do you call it? Spaghetti squash, I think. Yeah, stuff like that. There's so many choices that bring you a lot more nutrition and a lot more phytonutrients for sure than that, just quite tasteless and colorless bowl of pasta will ever do, for example.
Well, so Hanna, we're talking about just the nutrients and the balancing and just being creative with it. And over the years, you were obviously able to get to that level. Yeah. But so we talked earlier about other, things to use to help your diabetes. And so we talked about lifestyle, we talked about sleep, but so what about fitness? Where does that fit? Because a lot of people, they're afraid, like if I do too much exercise and I'm diabetic, I'm gonna, I burn a lot, then my sugars are gonna drop. Is there a way, in your experience that you can balance those things? I'm sure there is, but certainly in your experience, have you utilized any of the fitness programs out there? Are you doing anything specific to maintain as well? And just to keep the balance in the body, because there are studies, or at least there's articles I've read that, if you exercise enough, you might even start kicking, your body to even either produce or maybe regulate differently. So there are certain things that may happen. Now, maybe not when you have, a diabetes from early on, but somebody can have type 2 and eventually regulate themselves by exercising and converting. But those, in your case, in your experience and your extensive search and research here, what would be, a good balance in terms of fitness in addition to nutrition?
Well, I think diet, or I don't like the word diet, nutrition and exercise, don't really like that word either, movement.
Okay.
They go really hand in hand. And those are sort of if I'm asked ever to sort of put those lifestyle choices into an order, those are top two for sure. And it's amazing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing actually how much exercise movement can really do. And it doesn't have to be harder than just take a walk every day. It also depends on, of course, where you're starting. If you are, I don't know, maybe quite active already and you're moving a lot and you are, I don't know, even going to the gym or something, then it's a different question. But if you're really, sitting there, just gotten your type 2 diabetes diagnosis, what do I do now? Just start by walking 10 minutes a day. That's all you have to do. And then you can explore from there. What do you think is fun? What brings you joy? What can you do for a longer period of time when you don't even notice time anymore? So I personally make sure that I go out for a walk every day, no matter rain, shine, snow, whatever crap nature throws at me. I'm out for a walk every day, and that already helps me so much, both mentally, but of course also with my blood sugars. And then I was an avid gym rat for a while, but then I really lost the taste for it because it was just, the people and the machines, and it was just, I just lost the taste. And that's okay. Like not every type of movement or exercise appeals to every person. I was also an avid runner before, and now I can't even take 3 steps without just, dying of boredom. So it all, and I think this is really important that everyone finds out what they can do and what really helps them the most. So now I live in Switzerland, as I said, and hiking here, all the hills up and all the beautiful nature and stuff like that. And I know it's not quite the same in the US, all parts of the US at least.
Oh, depends where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You got to travel to
places, but But for example, what I love, for example, when traveling was still okay to do, I love to get lost in a new city. And it's sort of, you just rack on the steps, you can take 20, 30,000 steps in a day, and you're just discovering something new and you don't even notice. And that for me is like, okay, this is, I could do this. If this is exercise, I can do this. So it also, as I said, it really depends on where you are. And then instead of the gym, I swapped out the gym for example, at-home workouts. So I just YouTube something, yoga, for example, different intensities, depending on my mood, depending on my energy levels, depending on the time of day, or, resistance band workouts, for example. Those resistance bands are really cheap, but super effective, and you can definitely feel it.
And you carry them anywhere.
Exactly. And you can just, even if it is okay to travel one day again, you can just pop them in your suitcase and just bring them with. So, small things like that, these choices that we all have to make in order to have a healthier life, they apply for people with diabetes too.
And Hanna, I think for people listening and watching, you're talking as a true believer and a true tester, because you are a true sample of a person that has been living with this and been able to maintain. But you sharing your way of dealing with it, but your way sounds to be, at least from what I'm hearing, and I buy every single you saying right now, because it sounds correct. Because for everything I know about nutrition, health, and the body, and physiology, and all this stuff, you're doing the correct stuff. Because the first thing is you're doing everything you like. And so there's no boredom, therefore you can do more of it. And also you develop the taste for all these new things, and it takes some adjusting to do. And sometimes, because we're used to one routine, it's very difficult to make that leap and switch. And you said a key word, taking that first step. Doesn't matter what level, depends where you start, but you have to start somewhere. And I again, common theme of all the discussions that I've had about nutrition is that first step. Be aware and make the first step, and make the adjustments to your lifestyle, and everything else will start following, in track. And that's a formula that everybody should be aware of. Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I just wanted to add to that. Fantastic points. And I wanted to add to that. It's all about finding a way to make a it doesn't have to be a super healthy. No one is healthy 100% of the time. That's impossible. But it's about finding the way how to make this healthier lifestyle sustainable for you as an individual. And if that is, you know, I don't know, an 20% rule, or if that is, you know, keeping some of the maybe not so amazing nutrition parts, or if that is, you know, and taking it easier on the exercise a couple of days a week, then you know what? You're already doing it, but it has to become sustainable for you and fit you and your lifestyle and your preferences. And I think that is a huge thing that very many don't really think about. And I specifically think of these, you know, 8 weeks to your great body, blah, 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 you know, these programs that are everywhere online and that I've fallen for as well. But they are, you know, this very often they are this, you know, rocket fuel of motivation for those 8 weeks, but it sure as heck isn't sustainable for the rest of your life.
Well, Hanna, I mean, the key, I think you're really sharing a term that we all need to learn and cherish and live with, which is sustainability, like something that you can do for a long time and not temporary. And you're right. There's so many forms of different, you know, diets and this and the other exercises, and that's actually great. But anything that can be done only in short term is going to be great for that minute, and then it's over, right? It's not a long-term commitment. It's not a long-term experience. One, two, if you do something and you stop, it's going to go back even sometimes even worse. So you don't want that. You want consistency, right? Is the key, as they say. It's just something that is at moderation. It's the same thing. I mean, we're in the Olympics right now, right? and it's like taking a sprint and someone that's doing a marathon. I mean, there's two different levels. Someone that's running a marathon can actually pace themselves for a long time and enjoys and continues. The sprinter will probably run for 100 meters and then that's the end of it. They can't keep up.
They're done.
They're done. Exactly. Well, that's the same thing. So we sprint here, we get it done. It's exciting. You get that nice rush, but that's about it. It's like drinking a Red Bull or coffee. Like you get the jitters for like 2 minutes and they're like shut down. Oops. You know,
exactly.
So, you know, you want to have that. And that's diabetes, and that's the blood sugar. It's consistently regulating your blood sugar, continue the body in the right pace. It's unique.
Yeah, no, diabetes is really a marathon and not a sprint. If you're in it for the sprint of it, you're not gonna keep motivated. And that's a huge thing. You have to, the reason why it's so important to find this sustainability aspect of your lifestyle, of a healthier lifestyle, whatever that means to you, or the individual, is because it is a marathon. And if you're in it for the sprint value and the, you know, the rush of getting everything right in one go and blah, 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 it's not going to work. Sorry, burst your bubble, but it's not going to work.
But Hanna, you're right. And you know, there is a word that's probably hard to state, but I will state it because I mean, it is a definition sometimes, diabetes as a silent killer, because it can be terminal. It can lead to very, very bad, you know, outcomes. However, it is very easily manageable as well if you know what to do with it. And it's not easy, but it can be done. Again, you're a true model of what can be done with it and still have a happy, healthy life. And so that takes me to the chronic conditions that diabetes can lead to. Mm-hmm. You know, there are so many. And one of the things that people may not potentially know is that because you have all this extra sugar in your body and the glucose and stuff, first of all, it destroys your capillary, you know, your fine, you know, vessels and blood vessels in your body, especially in the eye, the retina, you know, the kidneys, but more like the extremities in your feet and stuff like that. But then you have also, because of that, then you have developed sugar, cholesterol gets crazy in your body. And then now you have, you know, blood pressure. So it kind of almost like what I refer to as the three stooges, one leads to the other, and you have all of them. And that's not something, that's just some of the main conditions that people know about. There's so many other things that can happen. So that leads me to cure versus no cure, treatment versus no treatment. You talked about, you know, originally there were not enough insulins, or the insulins were different from today. Now they are more active. I mean, there's so many new generation insulin types.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, Trulicity now, it helps. There's different longer lasting, ones that regulate over the time. There's the Admalogs and things like that, which is like a rapid release that happens quick to reduce, the stuff. There's all these things. And there's also different pills that you can, utilize with those. And so it's a whole different thing. But, people have complained about, well, there is no cure. Can we find a cure? Is there enough research? So in your research, in your quest, have you had any, I'm sure you've attended seminars and learned stuff, I know in the world of diabetes, there's a big question. Why can we not try to find a cure and just have these remedies, but nothing effective enough to end it? Can it be ended? And why is it that, let's say, in the food and all the stuff, people are not really paying attention. There's still a lot of carbs, a lot of sugars and added to, to everything, right? In your experience as a diabetic person, as someone that's an advocate, what would you like to see in this world eventually?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Well, we're going to give it a shot, right?
Fantastic. Thanks. No, actually, and for this reason, because there is no cure and there is no, all these medications, they're awesome. They're fantastic. And then they save lives on the daily. Absolutely. Without insulin, if I was born 60 years earlier than I would not have lasted a year because there was no insulin. And that is a overwhelming thought at some point. So all these medications, whether it's for type 2 or type 1 or, a combination of it or whatever, they save lives and they're needed. They're necessary for maintaining life. However, as you say, they're not cures. They're sort of to limit the symptom, which is high blood sugar mainly, and, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all these, the trifecta of crap that can happen, and I would like to see a cure in my lifetime, but I have to be completely honest, and I am not too optimistic that I will.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the reason behind it is that because it's manageable, because there are all these additional things, it does help, for people to live. But certainly it is more of a complex life than, you would if there was just,
exactly.
one pill, it's over, it's done, it's cured, right?
Yeah,
but there's there's a lot of diseases or illnesses at the same rate that don't have any cure, but they have temporary, treatments and that you can live with. I mean, they might not be, because they're not as fatal, and or at least instant death, type of thing. People can live with them and cooperate with them and really coexist with those illnesses. But only the people that go through them would really understand, why you would need a cure. Yeah. Because it's one thing to know about it, to hear about it, but one thing to live with it, and much worse when you are the one that has to deal with it. Because like, even for me, I mean, I'm so close to it because I'm involved in it daily, but it's still not the same. Like when my mom is poking her fingers to get her test a couple of times a day, I know how painful I prick myself a couple of times, and I know how painful those things can be. I mean, literally, those little things, those little needles are, very, very painful, and then you have to switch shots, I mean, your body is like a little, you just keep putting holes in that body all day long,
A pincushion that is a pancreatic understudy. The odds are not in your favor sometimes.
It is crazy though.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I know there's a lot of studies, out there. There's a lot of, groups, there's a lot of associations and they all try to do the same. There's so much education about it. There's so much advocacy, but I think there's more to be done. And then I hope with technology, with the advancement in medicine, that there would be more. And also to your point, maybe we have to be aware. This is like nothing different from like when we talk climate change and stuff. If we do the basic elements and we start changing, and not focus sometimes only about the money and just that side of the world, we might be able to contribute to better and maybe lesser incidence of these illnesses. Because really, again, if the food industry, for example, assists, and you have now more of organic and healthier, less, ingredients, less chemicals in this stuff, less preservatives, less additives and all the stuff. In some foods, what I mean? But you're right, there's also more of a a wave of awareness that people are there now. They're taking it to the next step. People are more leaning towards getting some fruits from the farm and from like, a farmer's market than actually maybe going to like an organic, store like a Whole Foods. I'm not sure if you have them in Switzerland, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you have something similar. But I think you have better because you can go to the farms, in some parts and get it right. I mean, listen, all over the world, because I mean, I live in Jersey, and like right now, summertime, you can literally hit the farms and get all farm, produce, products. Now, in the summertime it's great. In the winter, it's a little harder, so you have to settle for what's available. But again, it's the changes, the shifts. Adding things. You might not be 100%, but any percent is better than nothing. So you start somewhere, and that, I think that's a key element. Yeah. So now I want to ask a question about the impact of like the information out there. Do you feel it's accurate out there at all times? There's so much stuff going on, social media, this, that, the other. So there's that new wave of information that's out there. Do you think it does justice to the actual diabetes world, or it doesn't? Is there any misdirection, misinformation throughout your experience?
No,
we've seen it moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And the real explosion of people who are willing to share their experience, because diabetes at the end of the day is a very individual condition to live with. So what works for me won't work for the next person, and what works for them won't work for the next person. And that's, completely okay. But there's just a much bigger willingness to find out what actually works for oneself. For example, I mentioned that I eat lower carb, reduced carbs, and for someone else, maybe a vegan high carb approach works a lot better. And that's fantastic. That's awesome. As long as we all sort of get to the goals that we need to get to in order to have this happy, healthy, healing life, long life that we all want and desire. I think it's important to find what works for oneself as an individual. And about the information that is out there, this is exactly the reason why I decided when COVID hit to go back to school, actually. And I'm studying a master's in diabetes.
Wow.
And this is an eye-opener, for sure. Even if I've lived with this stuff for 36 years, even if I've, lived it, there's not a second off when you have diabetes. It's 24/7. Every minute, every hour, no vacation, no pay, no nothing. And it's a job you can't quit. But despite this, in every lecture, in every paper, in every study, I learn something new. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And it is interesting to sort of compare that part of my life to sort of the advocacy part of my life and all this stuff that I see online and all the people that are sort of patient leaders with me in this field, and see what we all share and our experiences and how that sort of correlates or not to the actual science. And it's very interesting how sometimes people with diabetes become their own best doctors, because they find these little individual things out that works for them that might not work for anyone else. But hey, if it works for them and it keeps them happy and healthy, then why not? Just go for it. That's fantastic.
But Hanna, you're hitting on something important here, because again, because it is with you 24/7, is because you live in it, you are more involved in it, right? And you certainly would never stop until you try to find the next level and the better level, and until you get to a level where you might not even worry about it anymore or think about it, because and that's what makes a difference. Like everything, like when we are involved in something, that's when we actually learn everything about it. When you don't, I mean, it's okay. Like, all right, we know about diabetes. Everybody knows about diabetes. Everybody knows what it might do. We hear stories, but no one really understands it unless you're involved in it like deeper, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. There's never going to be a time when there's not going to be new studies, new research, new discoveries. And that's the thing. The closer you are to them, the closer you are to being healthier and better. And also sharing some of that value with others. And you're right. It might not be a one formula for everyone, but the theme is the same. It's still about, finding the balance, doing all the different things that we talked about, maybe ranking them in the right order, and maintaining. And again, it is tedious because you have to maintain it and it's hard, but and like everything else, sometimes we all get bored with things. And sometimes we get lazy. That's the other part, you know.
Yes.
And when it comes to your health, lazy, like I see it too. Like, you know, with my mom, sometimes, okay, today I'll cheat, you know, and I know it's hard sometimes to really stop her because she has to live somehow a normal life, right? And you know, like I feel bad sometimes when I say, no, you can't have this, you know, because I feel like, you know, I want to, you know, to have that
food police.
Exactly.
They're the worst.
Yeah, I know. And you know, you can have this. I mean, luckily there's a lot of substitutions you can do these days and stuff like that. And but even again, there are ramifications. Like for example, you know, even the substitution, like with the sugar-free stuff, may not be as healthy as people think because there's all these chemicals in it. You know, like sometimes, like I was reading this that honey is better for diabetes than actually sweeteners, right? And you might think, well, honey is sweet. But it's different is how the body reacts to it. So some of these things can be challenging. And with someone that's living with diabetes, it's just a matter of learning every day and adjusting, adapting, and being willing and able to just kind of like understand what the situation is and cooperate and really coping with the whole thing is the key. Because, you know, if you give up one time, you might just give up. And that's not the case, right? If you just say, you know what, whatever, I don't care, I'm gonna live. And that's the other thing. You don't want to have that feeling like that's it, enough, I'm tired. You can't be tired. So you have to maintain that healthy, happy level where you don't get to one extreme versus the other.
Yeah.
And I think that is a challenge. And I hope that anyone watching, listening, and I know for a fact, you know, and I almost can guarantee this, there's no one that's going to listen to the show that doesn't know someone that knows someone who might know someone who has diabetes.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's all over us.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, diabetes is something that is around us. And even sometimes we might not think that, you know, it's that close. It could be closer because even us at any given time, we might be able to develop that same condition based on our habits. If we stop training and stop working out, or just doing some of the burning of our, you know, system calories and things like that, you might start gaining weight, and maybe now you can develop problems and so on. There's so many other conditions that can trigger, you know, the same condition. Now, again, as you age, that's even, you know, more of a factor. You know, people tend to develop, you know, those types of diabetes, you know, eventually in time. You know, but it is unique. It is somewhere that is around. We should be all aware of it. And the more we know about it, the more we can either prevent it, which would be the key if we can. But if not, we would need to know how to deal with it and really trigger it. One of the things that I remember, when my mom was diagnosed the first time, took her to this doctor, and he was an endocrinologist, and what he said is that she started with type 2. He said, we're going to start her on the regimen right now with insulin, not until she develops one. So he gave her about I think it was a 10 milli something a day, you know, that she needs to put in, because he said, we're going to make her body, you know, kind of, you know, we're going to supplement the body today so she can resist longer and be better in a longer, you know, term. And he was right. That range of treatment that he did for her early on helped her be stronger and healthier for a much longer time. You know, obviously now it's getting worse or getting a little more difficult, but 30 years later, you know, and that was something. So again, finding the right, you know, folks, going to the right providers, the right resources is important. Otherwise, don't take a chance. Do it correctly and see the value of everything. And then, you know, if you're not sure, ask more than one, you know, opinion. Find more opinions.
Yeah. And this is something that I talk about so often. And this isn't just limited to diabetes. This is not limited to anything really.
Sure.
All chronic conditions should have sort of a similar thing. But I always talk about sort of the dream medical team. So basically you as the patient, you are at the head of this round table, right? And around this, you have to staff it with the most amazing people that you can find. So people who align with your goals, what you want to achieve, all of these things, and who can really help you on this journey. So in my case, there's an endocrinologist, there's an ophthalmologist, there's a podiatrist, there's a nurse, there's, you know, all these people. And I know they all work in order to make my goals a reality. And they don't set goals for me, I set goals for them. Which is a little bit reverse to what normal, so to speak, healthcare is, because then you go to a doctor, you get a goal, and you have to work towards it with their methods. Maybe real life isn't really like that. And I think it's important for all people who do live with chronic conditions to realize their role as the patient and as their role in this medical dream team, because it is a huge one. Without you, there is no dream team.
Well, it's true, and adherence is key too. Like, you know, I mean, you can work with the best team, but if you're not applying, it might not work either.
Exactly.
And like you just mentioned, 3, you know, key doctors or services that serve as the diabetes world, which is ophthalmology, podiatry, and a regular endocrinologist, which these are your key providers, because they understand it, because these are the 3 main, sometimes even what do you call them? Urologists, I guess.
Yeah.
So those are all the key elements that, you know, that you want to make sure that you're aware of and work with. But you're right, it's a full team effort, and you are the center of it, and your cooperation, your adherence to the directives and the concepts and the treatments is key. And if you cheat, you're only cheating yourself, because if you don't do exactly the right thing, at the end of the day, they're going to give you the best of their advice, but it's all about you.
Exactly. And also remember that all of the treatments are, you know, at the end of the day, you're the one who has to put them into motion. So whatever comes from whatever doctors or specialists sort of area, it really is up to you to make this reality. And whether that is a sort of a new medication, or whether that is something that you should think about doing, then it's up to you, and not up to them to do it for you, because they can't. They don't live with you 365, 24/7, and that's your job. Yeah.
Well, Hanna, I think we've come to the end of the show right now,
Yes.
and we've covered quite a bit, and it's an eye opener, and for everyone listening and watching, I mean, this is a topic that, you know, dear to everyone, and should be, because again, and it doesn't have to be about diabetes. To your point, a lot of the stuff that you've mentioned can apply to anyone with any type of illness, especially chronic, you know, illnesses, and you know, just be aware. You know, and do your research and be mindful of what's going on out there, and take the right steps. So any last words for today's show to our listeners and viewers?
I would say, my great big advice would be,
Yes.
it would be really to, no matter how far down you are, and how far down the drain you think you are, and you're too old, and you're too sick, and you're too blah and too blah, it doesn't matter. There's always something that you can do to improve your situation, in finding these individual small little tricks and nicks and knacks that really help you get healthier. So there's always a way, and I'll be happy to discuss online or somewhere with you what those could be for you. So hit me up somewhere.
Well, I will have a description of your, you know, information on the site, on the show, so people can reach out direct. And thank you for those wise words, because you know, I think they're powerful words that we can apply in general, period.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We should. So with that, Hanna, thank you for joining us today, all the way from Switzerland, and for great advice, great insights, and you know, your true motivation as a person, and you know, we all should listen to the advice and adhere to it. Thank you so much, and folks, thank you for watching on the iHealth channel and listening on iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here with guest Hanna. We'll be talking soon. New show, new guest, new topic. Ciao for now. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.